The policy committee meeting for April. We didn't meet last month because of all of our budget work. So we have a few today, including one that we kept back, and I don't remember why we kept it back. I'll have to open my notebook. Can you mind if I just jump right in, or do you guys think? Okay. So the first one on our agenda is policy BEDB, which is our policy on agenda preparation and dissemination. And we decided to hold it back into committee, but I did not write down why. Does anyone remember?
Ms. Raymond, I think there was conversation about what's the fourth paragraph, I believe, regarding new business.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And I think that we just wanted to have some more conversation about that. Additionally, when I was working with Ms. Kinsella regarding the agenda for the policies, just clarifying why we needed 7 days. And it was really about the preparation for all the aspects and making sure that the board members get the accurate information. So those were really the two things that we updated there, but I think you wanted to have some more conversation about that fourth paragraph.
Right, because right now, I think our practice is to make sure everything is in the Wednesday before the meeting, which only gives administration literally 1 day to put everything together, which isn't quite enough. So they're asking for Monday, which is fine, which I think has been the policy for a long time, and we just don't follow it. And then the new business. In the past, our process had been, there was a time on the board where the process was, if you or I or anybody had a topic that you wanted discussion at any particular committee, you would just email that committee chair and say, hey, I really would like to have a look at the iReady data. Can you put that in your queue for a future curriculum meeting? And then we had a situation where, in policy in particular, we were only doing board member requests, and we were not doing any of the actual policy work that we're required to do by law because there were so many board requests. So at that time, the board made the decision that new requests for agenda items needed to come to the full board and then be sent off to the committee so that the president and everybody was aware of what was going on in the queue. Because other people were also concerned that their things weren't getting to the top of the queue. They felt like they were being ignored. So this way it was more transparent. However, I don't know that we need to add that extra step of getting, like if one of you is like, hey, you know what we should talk about? We should talk about whether or not we have a policy on, I don't know, something. Maybe can we talk about, a policy about creating new after-school programming, right? I don't know that you would need to, that it makes sense to have you reach out to the superintendent and the president and say, on the next agenda, can you add sending to policy a request to have a policy discussion about new extracurricular programming?
So how would be the best? What would be the best way to do that then?
So I say two things. New business. So I would put something about, because anybody can add new business, right? It says every board member has a right to add items on the agenda. And then it says matters not included in the agenda may be presented during the meeting if the board agrees to discuss the matter, right? So I would say new business items. I think at that case, I don't know. I think I need some help with the word. Because I think what should happen is if you have something that's new business, that's global, right? Like I have a new business item, we should talk about adding basket weaving, right? You would email that to Jen and she would put it on an agenda.
Yeah.
Right? And then we may decide to put it to curriculum. But Jen could respond to you to say, hey, I feel like that should just go right to curriculum. Why don't you email Neil? Right?
Ms. Raymond, do you feel like there's topics or conversations that are not being addressed, and that's why this has to be, because I feel like when things come up or comments come up about, various topics, extracurricular activities, whatever it is, we are pretty responsive to trying to address it in with our due diligence, whether it be at the full board level or via the committee.
Right. I feel like we could just change shall to may.
I mean, that
And that
makes
way,
sense.
we have that, if a future board has problems where they feel like the president is not being responsive, or they feel like their item is not being attended to, then this gives them the ability to say, hey, I'm not getting responded, I want the board to weigh in. So it has some internal,
Like, when I think of new business items, all I think of are things that, like Mario puts on there that we really need to, that are time sensitive. And it says if there's a new business item that is time sensitive, the board may vote to suspend the rules. We don't do that now.
right, because I would say the majority of the new business items don't belong in committee, they belong at the full board, right? Like, if Mario says, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example recently of a new business item. Well, a new business item would be, if we're talking about redistricting the elementary schools, right, as a new business item, I don't think that has to be referred to any particular committee for the board to do it.
Yeah.
So maybe we could change new business items may be referred to a committee by the president or with a majority vote for analysis and recommendation, and then just strike. If there's a new business item that is time sensitive, the board may consider it at the full board meeting.
Yeah, I think we could just strike it because we don't make that vote now. And a lot of the things that we do address are time sensitive.
Right, so do we want to strike that entire line or just change may vote to suspend the rules to may consider it at the board meeting where it is introduced?
Yeah, I think it's because it's sort of repetitive. If, you're saying the president can be overridden with a majority vote of the board. So you don't really need to go into that.
Right, the only other thing that I'm thinking about is when we changed policy to have two readings, right? A first reading and a second reading to give people two opportunities to have public comments. By having a policy and following a policy saying that new business can't be voted on the same night unless we vote, then it says it goes from new business to unfinished business, and it delays everything 2 to 3 weeks so that the public gets two opportunities. I don't know that we have had the public coming in saying, hey, you voted on something and we didn't get to weigh in, because we're pretty.
Well,
Although we have to consider.
I think that did happen with the, when they changed the weight of classes. Remember, like, when
Right,
people.
but that was a 4-year process.
Yeah,
Right, it
People
wasn't
just
new.
didn't pay attention till the last vote.
yeah,
So it's not like it didn't go through committees. It had been presented multiple times.
yeah.
Yep.
So what do you think, Mr. Posca?
I like the idea of striking shall and replacing it with may. And I think to Mr. Johnson, I think was making a similar point, that next sentence should still remain in there going forward, because I think it is a catch for, there is some things that aren't going on. There are opportunities for the board to vote to suspend the rules to bring some new business forward.
I'm thinking about new business that is on the agenda when we get the agenda already, not something that the administration has put on the agenda. Do we want to have some education to our board to say, hey, listen, anytime you vote on this tonight, instead of bringing it back in 2 weeks, you have to have a vote to do that?
I mean, the question is
Because that's really what our policy says that we're not doing. I think this is why we retained it.
right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't do it now. I feel like if we leave this in here, then we should start doing it. So then that would be an extra vote before any new business. And so we'd have to vote to suspend the rules, and then we'd have to vote on whatever it is that Dr. Andre has brought to us, which seems repetitive, but if that is something that then we could vote not to do it if enough people feel strongly about it. So maybe it is important to have that
Because I
vote.
think that I think that the way this reads, it almost sounds like the default is new business, we're gonna present it to you, and you're going to think about it, and we're gonna come back, and it will be an unfinished business, and we'll vote next time.
That's not really the way it's working, though.
That's not what we do, but I think that's what it says.
Yeah.
So I think the language needs to be fixed so that it reflects what we want to do. And what do we want to do? Do we want to say new business items that are time sensitive will be voted on that night unless the board votes to,
Yeah, it's almost like
Wait.
Yeah, that would make it more, yes, I like that, because that would give us the option if we felt strongly about it, but that would make it,
right, so instead of voting,
Normal.
right,
so I would get rid of if there. I would just write new business items that are time sensitive.
and how we
board-
voting to, right, to suspend the rules, or we're voting to?
I would write the board will consider them in that meeting. New business items. I don't know. No, I don't like the way I'm
No,
wordsmithing
because I
it.
think the new business items, I think if it's a new business item and it's just something that we can roll through and vote on and be all set, it's fine. But if there's an exemption, the exemption is to push it out, not to push it forward. You know?
how about new business items may be voted on that evening or at that meeting, unless a majority of the board votes to delay it.
What do you think?
I mean,
Mr.
it's also, if
Costa?
there's a new business item that is not time sensitive, the board can vote to delay.
I mean, we've delayed things that are time sensitive too, because sometimes we're jerks, but
or just
sometimes we're
then
like,
just
we
that-
need more information before we're ready to go.
Yeah.
That's why I'm wondering if we just strike the
Strike the
whole
whole
thing.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Then we get to decide what you want to do.
Kind
I
of.
just get concerned
I
about
think it gives you
future
the option during the board meeting to determine what those next steps are as opposed to following this policy.
Right. I do appreciate the idea that we want public input, and if there is a new business item and no one has anything to say about it, and then we think it's a big deal that we'd like to know what the public thinks, like having that discussion and saying, listen, no one came, maybe we should not vote on it today unless we have to. Give it one more session.
So
But I
maybe
don't
it's
think
the-
that we necessarily have to do that, because frequently people don't come because it's not something that the public has a strong feeling about.
Yeah.
So it could simply be that the board may vote to
I
delay a final vote on,
I almost would just say, I would just say new business items may be referred to a committee or with the majority of the vote for analysis, and then leave it.
And recommendation. So the recommendation going to be vote on it that night or make an action on it that night.
Right, like,
right.
Okay, I like that.
new business items may be referred to a committee for action or voted on that evening. Or new
I think we
business
can
items
word it a bit.
may be voted on that evening or be referred to a committee or delayed. I don't know, that's 3 options now.
That is 3. So, just to clarify, so I think we're in agreement, new business items may be referred to a committee by the president. That's clear, right?
Right, or if we want to override her.
Or with a majority of the vote for analysis, or with a majority of the vote for analysis recommendation. That's
Sure,
2.
That's fine.
Third one is, the board may also consider action on that item during that, at that time.
Yep. Because then the action can be whatever we determine.
Yep.
If we determine it needs to go for the next meeting or it has to go to a committee, we can make that determination at that time.
Because sometimes new business items are informational.
Right, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Take action during the meeting. I'm gonna write, I wrote, the board may also take action during the meeting. When appropriate.
Sounds good.
Or we could say, yeah, I want to say without objection, but I'll just say when appropriate. Because I think that we still retain the right to say, slow down, we need more information. Okay, and then it says, the board shall follow the order of business unless the order is altered by a 2/3 vote of the members present. Typically, our practice has been to say, is there consensus to take items out of order? This particular board makeup usually just says, yes, no one objects, and that's considered more than 2/3 because there's no objection. We could say, shall follow the order of the agenda.
How about unless there's an objection?
No, because
Yeah, we don't want to leave it as one.
the objection is typically to reordering,
Okay.
right? Because sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes someone will say, listen, we have a community partner here, and so we would like to take this new business item and move it to the beginning of the agenda.
Yep.
Right, and then Jen, or the president will say, are there any objections? Right, and people will say,
No.
How about, if there's an objection to following the order of business, it can be altered by a 2/3 vote?
maybe we should, maybe we should go back and do a side-by-side of this and we don't have the NHSBA one here.
Not in the packet.
Not in the packet, because,
Okay.
oh, we do. You gave it to me here, it's the next page in my packet.
Okay, good.
Agenda preparation and dissemination.
Yeah, because the language in the NHSBA one is very different, and I like it, frankly, because on the second page of that one, it says, any board member can suggest items of business. The only thing is it says staff member, student, or citizen. So how do we do that? Oh, it says it'll be the director of the,
Discretion of the board chairperson.
the president of the board. So if you have a thing and you're a citizen, you just email the president and the president decides whether to go it on. I like that. And then it says the board shall follow the order of business set up by the agenda unless the order is altered by a majority vote of the members. Items of business not on the agenda may be discussed and acted on if a majority of the board agrees to consider them. And that's those cases where, hey, I found this out this afternoon, or I asked you 72 times to put this on the agenda and you didn't, so.
And are we okay going with majority over and changing that from the 2/3?
I'm okay with majority.
I'm
How
okay
do you
with it.
feel?
Yeah, it sounds okay to me. Does that mean that we have to vote every time we want to change the agenda?
Well, we do.
We do, but you
do,
can
but it's
say, are
usually-
there any
By consensus.
objections?
Okay,
And if there are no objections, then everyone agrees.
Yep.
okay.
Like, does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
So the only thing, I'm gonna go back to the beginning of this one. The only thing that is different is, ours says the superintendent or designee after consultation and agreement with the board president or designee and the standing committee chair shall prepare the agenda for the meetings of the board. And I do like the after consultation and agreement of the board president. Which I don't think has ever been a problem in Nashua. But I do think that that meeting between the president of the board and the superintendent is important because people email this. So can we look at can we edit the NHSBA one to be what we want instead of trying to edit ours?
Yeah. Do we want to take this then and move it to the next? So we can, do you want to work on this first and then bring it to the next policy meeting?
We can, but I don't think it's gonna be a lot of changes.
Okay.
So,
You really just want to change the first couple of lines, right?
right, so I would say the superintendent or designee after consultation and agreement of the
I don't know.
president. I don't think we need all of the committee chairs to be at that meeting where they set the agenda, because we never have.
No, we haven't.
What we do is we finish this, and then it goes to the superintendent's administrative assistants and they bring it forward,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to be called into another meeting
Right,
Yeah.
to be
unnecessary.
like, yes, exactly what we did is what,
Yeah.
I haven't had any problems. All right. And it says, in doing so, the superintendent shall consult with the board, so I would get rid of that because we said he's gonna consult with the board president. Items to be placed on the agenda should be received by the superintendent 7 days. Each board member has the right to place things. Matters not may be presented, provided the board agrees. The board may choose not to deal with every agenda item. That's the same. The privacy rights paragraph is the same. Then theirs has one about staff members, students, citizens suggesting items. And it says, shall be at the discretion of the board president. Change chairperson to president because that's the word we use.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with this.
Okay? And then the board, and then this is the part where we were getting mired in our language. The board shall follow the order of business unless the order is altered by a majority vote. Items of business not on the agenda may be addressed and acted upon if the majority of the board agrees. The board may not revise board policies or adopt new ones unless the action has been scheduled or unless there is an emergency. So action has been scheduled is when it's on the agenda because we've gone through the policy committee. The only time I can think of an emergency was COVID.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there were other circumstances where we've waived the first reading and voted on stuff
Absolutely.
after it's come here, or where we got new information between this meeting and the board meeting, and we said, this is a policy that's legally required, or we need it for something, and so we want to vote on it tonight.
And you put it on the agenda.
Right.
Yeah.
But there may be a situation
Where it's not on the agenda.
where it's not on the agenda, but the administration comes to us and says, we've been audited and we found out that this particular policy on district credit cards is not in compliance, and we only have until 3 days from now to get in compliance,
Yeah.
right? Like, that could happen. So I'm okay with that.
Okay.
So it says, agenda and supporting materials should be distributed to board members 7 days prior to the board meeting. Well, if we're giving the stuff to the superintendent 7 days prior, that's
It's
not
a little
enough
hard
time
to
to get
have,
it to
right.
us.
Yeah, we already decided to take that line out, right?
Yeah, so we have 3 days. So we get it on Friday, the meeting's on Monday.
And it's posted on Friday.
So, Ms. Raymond, if you, in essence, what we're doing is if we're looking at our current policy, we're making the subtle switch in the first paragraph. The next 2 paragraphs are consistent with what we have in place.
Yep.
Then we're kind of eliminating the next 3 paragraphs there and adopting
The paragraph that they
those
have.
2 paragraphs there, but that's not with any board member, et cetera, and then the board should follow the order of business. So we're adopting those into our policy. And then I think the remainder of our policy can remain as is.
I think so.
It doesn't say anything about posting it on the website.
Oh, we should add that. The agenda and the supporting materials should be distributed to the board members 3 days prior to the board meeting.
On our policy, it does, Ms. Lampier.
Oh, it
Oh, yes,
says,
yeah, I'm looking at the
Yep.
NHSBA.
The last paragraph,
Yeah, the
yeah.
last paragraph.
so the last paragraph says, when the final agenda has been established, it will be made available to the public upon request. We had a line that we blacked out about made available to the press because it's on the website.
I mean, I like our paragraph better.
Yeah. Right to know law. So there is a line in the NHSBA one that says, members of the public who wish to speak at board meetings regarding an agenda item are encouraged to contact the superintendent prior to the board meeting. Do you think the superintendent would want that?
I don't think that's needed, right?
And we have the
No, I don't
public
think so.
Yeah, the public can
comments
just,
section anyway.
Yeah.
Right, like, do you think the superintendent would want the public to call him and say, I plan to come to your meeting and talk about X, Y, Z?
And I think they'd be encouraged to make that comment at the public comment section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that he does not want to pre-advance notice the comment, because I see him, he takes notes. Okay, so we are gonna replace, I didn't have time to go get my laptop today, so Ms. Kinsella and Mr. Posca were kind enough to print it out for me, so I can write on it, which is great. But we're gonna delete our paragraph 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, no, 4 and 5.
In that one line of 6.
Am I miscounting? 5 and 6. Okay, we're deleting 4, 5, and 6, which starts with new business items, and the last one is if there's an emergency.
Yes.
We're deleting these, and we're replacing them with, what number is that? 1, 2, 3, 4,
And 5.
and 5. And we are changing board chairperson to board president. Or president of the board, whatever Ms. Kinsella thinks is better grammar.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, is everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah.
And then we're continuing with our last 3 paragraphs. We're not making
Yes.
any changes there.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, that sounds good.
I like the, hey, FYI, you're expected to read this. Okay. Oh, I didn't write down the time I started the meeting. I think it was 6:01. And I didn't do a roll call. I just dove right in, like I have never done this before. Mr. Johnson is here, and Ms. Lampier is here, and Mr. Posca is here. Okay, so the motion is to amend BEDB by deleting, by editing paragraph 1, right,
Editing paragraph 1,
as discussed, and deleting paragraphs
4, 5, 6.
4, 5, and 4 through 6, and replacing them with the NHSBA policy language, their paragraph
Paragraphs 4 and 5.
4 and 5, right?
Yep.
And to send that to the full board.
I will second that motion.
I don't know how she reads my handwriting. Oh, no, you guys have the same initial first name. I have to do both. My notes, I just write H or R or whatever. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, 3-0. Yay, that was fun. Okay. I have too many papers now. That's why we went paperless, so that I wouldn't have this floating all over. Okay. Mr. Posca, do you want the one I scratched all over? Or do you have it?
I have it all.
Okay, great.
Yep.
All right, so the next policy is EFAA, which is meal charging. And I have a note to myself that Ms. Daigle, our head of food services, took a look at the policies regarding school lunches and paying for school lunches. And we have currently EFDA and EFDAR. And what Ms. Daigle has suggested that we do is that we replace EFDA and EFDAR with EFAA, because it combines both policies into one. And it includes the My School Bucks information for people wishing to buy it online, so that so that our families have one place to look instead of multiple places to look.
Okay.
but I seem to recall from my conversation that there's not a lot in EFAA that is different than our EFDA. And we talked about some of the differences in our meeting about when we notify home and what the meal options are if people run a negative balance. So I hope Mr. Posca could bring our attention to those.
Yeah, I think to exactly what Ms. Raymond said, this is kind of just consolidating policies into one. I think Ms. Daigle, when we worked with Ms. Daigle about this, she and her team looked over, and in essence, it's the same one. And I think the message that I think is really so important that we all understand is that our practice is still the same. It's still about working with families, trying to understand their situations, and trying to figure out what we can do to support them as they're going through this process. That, in its essence, is what we're still all about and what we want to continue to be doing. So by kind of adopting this new policy, our practice isn't going to change. It's really just, taking two policies and reducing it down to one.
So the parts that are different are the new policy says in elementary school, if you have a negative balance of $10 or more, or in elementary school and in elementary school, if you have a thing of $10 or more, you still get lunch. In middle and high school, if you have a negative balance of $10 or more, you will get the sunflower and jelly and water.
Yeah.
So our previous policy said basically the same thing, except everybody got the bread, the sunflower and jelly.
Yeah.
And then we said fruit and milk. So it's a little bit different.
I think it's good that the elementary school kids would get this, the meal instead of the sandwich. It just seems like, especially at that young age, that it would be really, not great to, for the other kids to say, well, why you have that? I think that it would be difficult for teenagers as well, but we can be reimbursed for the meal for the elementary schools.
I think Ms. Raymond and I had a really good conversation about this and what it's all about. And I think I just go back to what I said previously. It's really about working with the families to try to find solutions to this whole process.
Yeah.
And I think that in of its essence, and I want to really credit our principals and our assistant principals at the building levels who are doing this on a regular basis and working with the food service team. And I think that was when Ms. Daigle and I were talking about, in essence, that is not changing. That is still who we are at. It's our core. And, I think Ms. Raymond brought up a lot of good points when we were trying to go through that process. And again, I was pushing back about what this is, who we are and where we're going with this direction. It's still what we are. I don't think this is a major change to how we're conducting our business or our policy on a regular basis.
Yep, and
Yeah.
my biggest concern was making sure that our kids aren't going hungry regardless of their situation. And then my secondary concern was making sure that the kids, especially at elementary school, are not being ostracized for getting a different meal.
Yeah.
Right, like if you choose the sunflower and jelly, that's great. But I still think that the elementary school kids should get the choice of the meal that is available.
Yeah.
I kind of think all kids should, but I get it. The other difference in this new policy and our policy is our policy went through very, very specifically about who says what when there's a negative balance. So ours was very clear that the cashier will not tell the elementary school kids that they have a negative balance while they're in line, but they will at middle and high school. And it said that once kids become $20 behind, that's when the notification starts. The new policy doesn't say anything about what the cashiers are supposed to do, except that volunteers will not be used to communicate with parents about unpaid meal charges under any circumstances. But it does say that at $10 is when the notifications start going home.
Yeah.
And so high school is $3.75, and then middle school is $2.75 or $2.50,
I think 275, I believe.
$2.75, and then elementary school is $2. I forget. I had it and I didn't write it down, and so this is my fault. Nonetheless, it's about a week for elementary school kids to hit that $10 threshold, but only 3 days when you get to high school. Less than 3 days.
Yeah, less than 3 days. That's kind of,
And I feel like any family could get 3 days behind on lunch,
yes.
right? And so, but at that point, as a parent, I use the My School Bucks, and I have it set up to tell me when they are $10 left in their account. So that triggers me to know my kid's not going to have any money in 3 days. I need to put money in it. And that works for me because I typically have $10 or $20 that I can put on their account. But for families who don't have that ability in the middle of, in between paychecks, they can set up My School Bucks to tell them at any point, like you can say at $20 or whatever. But we also want the school to be contacting parents as soon as possible, not to hound them for the money, but to bring it to their attention.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Because as a parent, life is busy and you might not know.
How is that sealed letter going to be distributed to the kids?
So it doesn't say, it just says the district will work proactively with parents. A balance statement will be sent to parents when the school meal account falls to below $10. Weekly by email, and then a sealed letter home with the student.
Yeah, so like the kids that have a low balance, the teacher will walk around and put the sealed letter on their desks?
I don't know.
We had, this policy EFDA had just been updated in, I believe, 2022. And we had some really good conversations about that. And it was really, administrators or assistant principals talking to parents and working with those families about what those needs were. It might be, hey, can we email you something? No, can you put a note in my child's bag and I'll grab it when my child arrives home? That's fine. We didn't want to put certainly at the elementary level put them in the middle. Even at the middle school level, there was a conversation I had, but I think there was follow-up from the administrators about what those needs were and trying to reach out to see if there's supports that can be put into place. So even though when we had those conversations, and that's why I keep emphasizing the fact that our practice is not changing as far as what was going on. I think that's going to still remain who we are and continue to work with those families, because that's really what's more important, is that we kind of establish those relationships.
Yep. And the policy goes on to say, like, at $10 is when the school starts reaching out. And this should be adult to adult,
Correct.
right? I don't necessarily, I can see sending a sealed letter home with the student if there's been no response, right? But I could also, personally, I'd prefer you just to mail it. But then once it hits $50, the school is going to ask the parent to come in. Because at that point, we really want to have that face-to-face contact with the parent and find out what's going on and how can we hook them up with the services and that we have in the community, and also the free and reduced lunch forms, and find out if there's anything else that we can do to provide support.
Yeah.
And I think Ms. Daigle was very clear that that's the goal here. It's not to go chasing people down for money, although, it's important that our books be balanced at the end of the year. It's more important to us that students and families have the resources that they need, so that kids aren't hungry at school. And if they're going to be hungry at home, the school has a ton of resources in the community that we can connect the families to that they might not even be aware of.
Yep.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And just some of those resources at the elementary level, we have a program with End 68 Hours of Hunger, and programs with the United Way where food and meals can be sent home for the weekend. So,
I think that's what, in my brief time here in Nashua, the amount of community outreach and support for meal awareness has been significant, and I think you're absolutely right. There are some things in place to help support those families and those who are in need.
Yeah, I mean, I know how cranky I get when I'm hungry, so I cannot imagine trying to learn to read or learn to do math while my stomach is growling. So that's really our goal, is to make sure that the kids have what they need while they're here, but that also we're doing some of that outreach to the families to make sure they have what they need when they're not here too. And that parents know what's out in the community, because they might not know.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about approving EFAA and then having it replace the other two?
I don't see any problem with it. Well, actually, one thing is that where where the high school meals, it only accounts for 2 meals, whereas in our policy currently it says 3 meals.
What is the third meal?
Let's see, in EFDAR, it says procedures for student meal charges, elementary school, and then middle and high school. It says the student will be allowed to receive the meal of his or her choice until such time as the student, it's 2. So
Two
it really
paid
is the
breakfast and
same.
lunch, yep.
Okay, all right, so that is the same, really.
And then at that point, it goes to and that's, again, that's,
I saw the 3 for the elementary schools, and I just assumed it was the same.
yeah.
Okay. All right, yeah, so I don't see any other issue with it.
And the thing that I like about the EFAA is ours said you get 3 at elementary school, and then you get the sunflower butter, et cetera. This one says $10, which is longer,
Yeah, that's good.
which I like better.
Okay. You mentioned that there was a line that said something about the cashiers shouldn't say anything to the students. I don't,
That is in our policy. It is not in the new one. It's in EFDA. And it says unresolved debt, and then it says, here's the procedure if students have unresolved debt. My thought on this is that this is a procedure, not a policy, and that should be an internal
okay,
training document and something that the food service staff are trained on and given, but
Okay.
not necessarily something that is a big P policy.
okay,
Does that make sense?
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Because I'm okay with certain, I'm okay if one of the middle schools says, you know what? We're not having our cashiers notify the student. We've decided that in our school, what makes sense for our students is to have our principal call home
Yep.
okay.
instead of putting that on an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I'd rather have food services and the building administrators decide what makes sense, as long as we're saying that our policy as a district is that we don't get below $10 without notifying the parents.
Okay.
That works.
Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Any other questions? All right, so I'm gonna move that we approve EFFA.
EFAA.
Oh, yeah, EFAA. Type on my sheet. Approve EFAA and send it to the full board. I'll be interested to hear if there's public feedback or feedback from other members of the board.
Yeah. Do you need a second?
Yes, please.
I can do the second if you want.
You can go ahead.
All right, great.
Oh, we haven't got there?
No,
No,
that's
go
where we are. I
Oh, okay.
moved. Now I need you to second.
Okay, I'll second it.
And now we're voting. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. And then I move that we rescind EFDA because it's duplicative.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. And then I move that we rescind EFDA-R, again, it's duplicative.
Second.
Okay. I almost wanted to say duplicative on the agenda next week when it says rescind, so that it like piques my memory that that's why I want to
That's why
rescind
you rescinded it.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So, the next one is GCF, which is, administrative and supervisory vacancies. And this is really an HR policy. And we had talked about whether or not we should talk about it in this committee or send it to HR. I was hoping Ms. Gilio could be here, but she has her Chelmsford School Board meetings
yeah.
on Tuesdays. So I don't know if we want to move forward with it or if we want to hold it or if we want to send it to HR. There's a couple of changes where we're not really following this policy properly. Like we don't post our openings in the newspaper anymore because we don't have a public, a Nashua newspaper. There also isn't really like even the Nashua Ink Link and the Nashua Patch don't really have
Job listing.
job
they're-
listings
yeah.
anymore. Things have just changed. So I just want to write advertised externally so that we're not limiting ourselves to today's
Yes.
options, and so that advertised externally means you must continue to post it somewhere and wherever that changes. Like
Okay.
LinkedIn, Indeed, I don't know, they change.
Yeah, well,
I'm sure there's school-based one, like education-based publications.
yeah.
Should it say advertised online then, or should it just be externally?
Externally,
Got it.
because maybe we'll get a newspaper again. Maybe the district will be like, you know what, we're gonna start posting them in the Union Leader because we need more people to apply.
To see.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't know people who do that. So that's the first change. And then the second change is under number 2, under the hiring process. So I'm just gonna say, I think we should keep everything else the same. I think that, if we're not gonna post the qualifications, duties, salary, et cetera, the superintendent and the board should know that we're doing it that way, right? Because it's a change in practice. I do think that the vacancies should be routinely conducted both internally and externally, that we shouldn't limit it and be like, we're only hiring outside or something. And I think that if there are job postings where there's some exceptions, that the HR committee should be told, right? Which I don't think we've had a problem with any of those. I do think that it's okay for us to continue to have on there, board members may request to review copies of resumes. Typically what happens now is if it's assistant principal or above, a board member is asked to sit in on the interview team. And they get the same materials at the same time as the rest of the interview team. And then they give them back so they can be shredded because it's confidential information.
Yep.
And that's why this says review copies of resumes. If somebody else on the board wanted to know who the applicants were or what the qualifications were of the applicants, technically, they have a right to do that, but they need to do it at a place where they don't take any of the documents home,
Okay.
right? Because they're not ours.
That's right. It's all.
People have the right to, there's labor laws. So the superintendent or designee will identify members of the interview team. That's great. We don't want to be part of that. We do want to make sure that most of the people on the team are not school board members and community members. But in all the teams that I've been on, there's been at least a parent,
Yes.
if not more than one parent. And I think that has been really helpful. I don't know about this internal candidates will be interviewed on the first day. I don't have any strong feelings. I don't know if Mr. Posca has strong feelings about it.
I do not, and I think I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's just really about a convenience in making sure they get an interview. Sometimes there are, people who can choose, they prefer to be on the second day or the last day.
Sure.
So I think it's just the more important piece is, part of that is all internal candidates will be interviewed, period.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, I like that.
so I would suggest that we cross out first day because we'll be interviewed for all on the first day. And then it says the HR committee will be informed of exceptions. The HR committee chair will be informed of the date and time of all interviews so that a board member may participate as a member of the interview team. So right now, the process, as it's been working the last couple years, is that somebody from administration, whether it's Mr. Posca or someone from HR or the principal, has emailed the chair of HR. And then the chair of HR has determined whether or not it's something that they want to do, or if they need to send it out to the other members of HR.
Okay.
And then if there's no members of HR available, the next step is to send it out to the rest of the board. And then if none of us is available, the next step is to talk about, well, what are we going to do if none of the 9 of us can attend this interview?
Okay.
Because we want somebody there for a variety of reasons.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then it says only candidates with a complete application, letters of recommendation shall be considered. People still do 3 letters of recommendation?
We do.
All right, great. And then you can't be on the team if you have been the person who wrote the letter of recommendation.
I like that. That makes sense.
Okay. So I'm okay with us sending it forward and then asking Miss Julia, I asked her to take a look at it and she didn't have any feedback for me
Yeah, I mean, we got 2/3
of HR
here
here.
anyway, so.
Yes. I feel kind of left out. Yeah, I don't see any issue with sending it forward.
Right. Maybe you can do HR in the future because you'll be retiring and you'll have time.
Maybe. Maybe. Maybe not.
Maybe not. Well, I can't wait to hear how Reagan's schedule has changed. Okay, so I'm gonna move that we approve GCF as amended with the strikeout that we did tonight of the first day of interviews.
Second.
Too bad I can't spell first day interview. And then the red lines. Okay? And send it to the full board. And Mr. Johnson, you were seconding it? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay. The next one is IKFB, which was called the Adult Education something, Adult Learning Education Program of Studies. Ms. Lesser has been working really hard to update a lot of things about
Yeah.
adult and community education. And I sat in the audience for a curriculum meeting last month or the month before,
The month before.
where she brought forth a whole presentation on it. Were you there, Ms. St.
I
Pierre?
saw part of it. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really cool.
It was really great. And so the program, she wants it to be renamed. It's been expanded significantly. It's very exciting. And she was really energetic and I really loved her presentation.
Yeah.
So she took a look at this policy and she had some updates that she wanted us to consider to align the policy with the new name and what the actual practice are.
I think you captured it exactly. I think it's, this policy hadn't been adjusted in a number of years. I think it now more accurately reflects not only the name change, but also some of the changes that have occurred through our adult ed program. I think we're continuing to move forward, and I think as Ms. Raymond said, one of the next steps that Ms. Lesser is working on is a more detailed program of studies that I will hope to be bringing forward. Two, probably curriculum and evaluation for, much like the high school does their own program of studies, we're going to see a little one updated for the NCLL. So some things in place for the next steps, and I think it just speaks to the enthusiasm, the passion that Ms. Lesser has for this program and the staff who work for her to work with our students.
Yep. Can I just say, this is my favorite graduation that we get? Well, Brentwood is the most emotional, and then this one's my favorite one
Yeah.
in the summer, because the people, the adults and the young adults, because some of them are just only 18 or 19 years old, and some of them are adults. The barriers that they have overcome towards accessing their education, it's just really inspiring to see people succeed, right?
Yes.
Despite significant challenges, and I just love it. So
It is really emotional, and I know that last year I think there was a few people that couldn't make it to the graduation because they had gone off to be in the military.
oh wow,
Which is crazy. But it's good that they get, I mean, I think that this kind of program gives them an opportunity to do that, which they might not have had if they weren't able to finish their diploma. So,
there was, I don't remember which year it was, but there was one year where a mom completed it and got her diploma. And what had inspired her to go back was now her teenager was here in high school. And so she was like, I can do this. It's time. I'm helping him or them with their work. And so I think I can do this. And she came back and she got her diploma, and then she ended up getting scholarships to college, and she's continuing her academic journey. And it was just really, really impressive.
yeah.
So any questions or comments other than that?
No, it looks all good, and yeah, I mean, she definitely had a lot of excitement about the rebranding, and it's good for the program.
All right, so I'm going to move that we approve IKFB as presented tonight and send it to the full board.
Second.
And I encourage anybody to look up the curriculum committee on YouTube what month is it? From February. Because it was a really, really cool presentation.
Is that really only February? It feels like it was about 3 years ago.
I know. Mr. Johnson, you seconded that?
No.
Oh, Ms. Lampier, okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And our last one this evening, which a ton of work has been put into, and I just want to give a shout out to Tina Avalar in the business office, because she has worked really, really hard on this policy, and she met with Chris Lassard, she met with the fire marshal's office, like she's been all over the place, having all of these meetings with the business office and with the athletic director and with like everyone to bring us some updates to this policy, which I really appreciate. So my understanding is that the genesis of some of the changes are a couple of fold. One, it's to align it with the actual facilities that we have, because we have now, we no longer have the Elm Street facilities. And so we want to make sure that those are corrected. And some things we just don't ever rent out, like the course rooms, so we're taking them off the list. And then the other big impetus for the change is that the last time this was updated was in 2021?
2016.
It says 2021, but I don't think we updated the fees or anything.
The fees had not been touched, I believe, since 2016.
Yeah, so 2016 was the last time we looked at the fees and the custodial charges. So when you rent one of the spaces in one of the buildings, our policy is that a custodian has to be there, right? And so during the evenings, during the week, the custodians are already scheduled to work. So for like biddy basketball, we're not charging them for custodians. But for a dance competition here on a Saturday, we need to bring in a custodian and pay them overtime. And the $30 an hour, that was the fee for that back in 2016, no longer covers even most of that. We're definitely doing this at a loss, which is, we're here for the community, but we also need to pay our people what their pay is. So that's some of the updates. And then there's others scattered throughout.
I think, Ms. Ramnick, one of the other things that we did want to address as a change is some of the usage of some of our equipment. In particular, when you're talking about the cheerleading mats and the wrestling mats, the wear and tear that takes over the course of the years, and just trying to create some type of nominal fee which organizations would then pay, so we can put that monies towards replacing those pieces of equipment when it's time for them to be replaced. Because those mats are used significantly, they get a lot of heavy usage, and then, the cost to replace them is significant. So if we can start having some monies in place, so we can get, Ms. Gingras can get on that cycle of a replacement, I think it benefits all parties. And as to Ms. Raymond said, we are here for the community. We're not trying to, put anyone out, but we also have to make sure that our equipment is up to standards and for all people who are using on a regular basis.
So this means that the groups that are exempt from paying for rental of like facilities, they are responsible for the use of certain district athletic equipment?
I think
That would be correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it depends on what it is. So we put, so hold on, we updated I'm just going to go through it. So we updated in the third paragraph. It's not a request form anymore, it's an online portal. And we ask that you do it 30 days in advance. If there's something that has come up less time than that, people can always call the business office, right? And be walked through it. And then the second change is it said request to go to the athletic fields to go to the director of athletics. Well, that's not really what we want. We don't want people off the street calling up or emailing Ms. Gingras to rent a thing. We want them to use the form or the portal that has the calendar that shows everything that's already there. And so if Ms. Avalar took us through the computer process, and so if you pick a date, it tells you whether or not the field is available or the gym is available. And it also tells you whether or not it's been already booked for athletics. Because our students and their activities have to come first. So the other thing, it says that Director of Athletics and the Director of Plan Ops may limit specific athletic fields to school-related groups, because those are the ones that our students use the most often, and we can't afford for them to go out of, be damaged and not be usable in the middle of an athletic season.
Okay.
The other thing that we're allowing them to do somewhere in here is cancel, it's under cancellations, that we might have to cancel the rental if it's raining and you need to use a field and it's too muddy to use it or something. So that's just normal. Under rental fees and charges, the other thing is we reserve the right, the district reserves the right to cancel or ask for a schedule change if the school needs the building for school-related purposes. Which Ms. Avalar says it's pretty rare that we have to do that, but we need to reserve the right to do it.
Sure. Something could get rescheduled, moved around, and then.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So if for whatever reason at some point we have to move graduation back to the building or something,
Yep.
we need to be able to do that because our kids deserve it. So under rental fees and charges, it says there may be a seasonal usage fee for the use of certain district athletic equipment, such as wrestling mats and cheerleading mats. And so that is something that those organizations need to have a discussion with the business office. to decide whether or not they want to do that.
So there is not going to be a mention of cost for seasonal usage in this policy, right?
this-
That's,
No, because I think it's going to be dependent on the specific athletic equipment that's being used.
okay,
So if somebody wants to, I don't know, use the weightlifting machines or something, like, I don't know what that cost is or how much it, like, someone has to research how much that would cost to replace or, and come up with what's a reasonable fee.
okay.
And I don't think a weight room isn't something we,
Isn't something we typically rent out. Usually it's the gyms and it's the
Right.
mats, but the mats only have a certain lifespan. And so if community groups are using the mats to the point that then they're not available for our students and we have to replace them in the operating budget. And I don't know that we have an answer on how much that fee would be. And I think the fee would be different depending on, are you a community group that is going to meet here 3 times a week? Or are you a community group that's going to meet here every second Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just I'm just a little bit concerned that it might be too much for some of these organizations. And I don't know. Yeah, I can't imagine that we are charging like an exorbitant fee. But
And I think there has to be some, you know, as I said before, I think there has to be some type of nominal fee for that. And I think, you know, where you were going earlier, Ms. Lampier, is it's still, you know, our groups that are exempt are still exempt.
yeah,
But all we're asking is, you know, this is a, I'll pick on wrestling mats, you know? It's a high usage type of thing, and when those break down, to try to purchase another one is, we're not asking them to pay for that whole piece, but can we have some money set aside so that when we go to repurchase it, we have a little bit of other money there to kind of help defray the cost of purchasing those new mats, which they also benefit from using.
yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if Ms. Avalar, when she was working on this, had reached out to any of these groups to see what they thought of that arrangement.
We did not.
Okay.
We did not.
So I'm interested to see if there's public comments when it gets to the full board, and if there's stuff that we don't know that we're finding out. I certainly don't want to make it more expensive for our community partners to use our facilities for the things that they are already using it for.
Yeah.
Because I know that a lot of them have very tight budgets where what they're bringing in for user fees doesn't pay for their, any of it, like, right? It's just enough to pay the officials and everybody else is a volunteer.
Yeah, the thing that just sticks out to me is the PAL organizations.
Yep.
So, yeah, I guess we'll have to see, but I think it does make sense. Their budgets are tight, our budget is tight, so we have to do what we have to do.
Right. And I think for me, and I think I was clear in the meeting, that if this is cost prohibitive, then we need to have another discussion about it because
Yeah.
youth sports are really critically important in the lives of our students. The other thing is that for the exempt groups, and this is our current practice, it just wasn't in the policy. If there's a custodian in the building, we don't charge you for custodian. But if there's not a custodian, then we do charge you for bringing a custodian in, regardless of if you're an exempt group.
Okay.
So most of the exempt groups are meeting during the weekday, like Biddy basketball's at nighttime, right?
Yeah.
But if they wanted to schedule a tournament on the weekend, then we would charge them for the custodian. And then it says under overtime staffing charges, Ms. Avalar has suggested a $10 an hour increase to the custodial fee, which covers some custodians' overtime fee, but not all of our custodians' overtime fee.
Yeah.
It's kind of an average of what we would be paying. So sometimes we're going to eat some money on that, and sometimes we're going to have enough to pay them.
And I think that was a significant discussion that we had as a group about what that cost should be. And I think Ms. Raymond said that, appropriately. It is going to vary, but I think there will be times that we still, it's not charged enough. There'll be times then that it's appropriate. One of the other challenges that we also had trying to determine that is that, that's one of our bargaining units. It's also in negotiations to this time. So we recognize that that number is going to be increasing, so we needed to protect ourselves for the, potential increase in costs associated
Okay.
with that.
So, and then we talked about what the current practice is, we just put it into the policy, which is the custodians get here 30 minutes prior to the event. And that's when we start paying them, so that's when the charges start. You get a custodian for 3 hours, even if you're only here for 2.5. It concludes when the space has been restored for usage for the following day. So some groups come and I think the vast majority of groups leave the building in the condition where they found it.
Yeah.
I think it's very rare for the custodians to have to spend some time. But if a group comes in and leaves trash everywhere and it's going to take the custodian an extra hour or two to clean it up, the group needs to be responsible for paying that.
Okay.
But again, this is mostly for not for our exempt groups. This is mostly for other groups that are renting. Like sometimes we have dance competitions, sometimes there's craft fairs. I think there's a church that meets in one of our schools or did in the past.
Okay.
There's a political rally, that kind of stuff. Do we charge the alderman and the mayor when they use our schools for their ward meetings? Like the mayor's having his, he's going to every ward right now to talk about the budget and talk to constituents. I know
think
my
we-
alderman has one next week.
I think we talked about that they're not charged, they're just talking about the use of the building.
Oh, all right. Interesting.
Yeah, it says under other exempt groups, city departments,
Oh, okay.
school district PTOs, and Boy Scout, Girl Scouts are not subject to reservation fees, rental fees, or overtime charges.
Interesting that the Boy Scout, Girl Scouts get their own special one.
Yeah, that's, I don't,
Do we have feelings about that? Do we want to put them in exempt?
I don't know why they're different than the other ones. Maybe because Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts isn't really a sports-related event.
So there's less chance of,
Because they're not renting
they're using a classroom or something.
Correct.
Yeah.
Not the gym or things like that.
Okay. And then destination imagination as well. The other parts that were requested that we update was just that there'll be an invoice if you use the kitchens, which is current practice. It just didn't say that invoice is separate.
Okay.
And then the fire marshal and our security director were very concerned about large events and that one custodian might not be enough to ensure the safety of all the participants
Okay.
or to clean up after a large event. So if you have an event that has over 250 people, you may need an additional staff member.
Okay.
And some of the examples were, like, if there's a huge event here on a Saturday that's using the auditorium or whatever, and people are parking all over and they're
Well,
not
yeah, like
following the
when
rules.
we had our budget meeting, the Saturday budget meeting, I couldn't believe when I got here and the parking lot was full. I was like, what the heck's going on?
Right.
There were so many people here.
And it's totally fine if they're parking in the parking spaces, but there have been circumstances where people have parked in the fire
Yeah.
lane, right? And so we need to make sure that there's enough staff to go out and say, hey, you can't park in the fire lane.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. So they were really coming at it from a safety perspective,
That makes sense.
not a being obnoxious perspective.
Okay.
So those, it's going to depend on the event and what additional staff you might need.
Okay.
Okay. And then we updated the insurance because we don't want the school district to be the person named on the insurance. It's the city of Nashua because we are part of the city of Nashua.
Okay.
We added vaping and tobacco products from the things that are prohibited along with alcoholic beverages. It just previously said alcoholic beverages and smoking, but you can't do dip. You can't be vaping.
Yeah.
We probably should have put, we didn't put illicit drugs, we could have, but they're prohibited anyways.
Yeah.
But it's still a drug, it says Nashua is a school zone, so it's.
Yeah, so you're not supposed to have this stuff. And then just to bring it back to our policy about conduct on on school grounds that we passed last month, if someone wants to take a drone video of their event, they still have to go through the athletic director for that,
Okay,
or the principal. But it's a separate policy.
okay,
Right,
I
they
thought
still
about
have to
putting it in
follow
here,
that
but there's a whole
policy.
policy about our expected behavior when they're here.
okay.
And then the big change is the money. So it's been 9 years since we updated it. I really strongly did not want to raise fees very much for our nonprofit groups. Like at all. So we did two things. We changed the line that says for-profit groups shall be double the nonprofit groups, because I said if we're gonna have to raise fees, this is not a money-making, this isn't a revenue stream for the district, right? We don't make money off of this stuff. But if we're going to raise our fees, I think that people who are making money off the event should bear a higher burden of the raised fees than our nonprofit groups. And I don't know how the rest of the board will feel about that, but I felt strongly about it. So the nonprofits were raised mostly $25, some less than $25, because if it was $85, it didn't really make sense to make it $110, right? That seemed crazy. And the for-profits, roughly $100 increase, but some are a little bit less. And this is to rent the facility for the entire event. It's not hourly. If you need the auditorium all day for Saturday, that's the all-day rate.
Okay.
And we got rid of band and chorus rooms and the middle school gym at Chestnut Street, and we left in it says playing field, and we left in that this excludes Stello Stadium because that entire system is still booked out and managed by Parks and Rec,
Okay.
which I have been harping on in the joint special committee.
Yeah.
That there was a whole argument about who's responsible for it. Is it the school district or is it Parks and Rec? And it has always been Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
And we left that in this policy.
Okay, good.
So I really wanted your thoughts on the increases. When did the district want us to update this policy? Is this one that we need to send forward to the full board today, or one that we can, as a policy group, like think about, talk to our friends and neighbors, and come back? Like, is it
And
for
I
the
don't-
end of the school year,
It
or
would
is
be,
it?
I think what we put in is it'd be effective July 1st, 2025, so it'd be effective starting in the summer.
Right, so I don't want to wait till June
Right.
to decide, because that doesn't give any of our community partners the opportunity.
Oh, yeah, and if we have to do 2 readings, it would be really June.
Right,
We
so
held off on it.
like I want to send it to the full board so there's ample opportunity for public comments and for us to adjust it if we need
Yeah,
to.
I agree. I think we send it to the full board, and then
Yeah.
adjustments can follow.
Do you guys have any strong feelings about the numbers before we send it to the full board?
I'm just really happy that for the nonprofit groups, we didn't increase it that much. And, you know, the for-profit ones, you know, it hasn't been changed in almost 10 years. And inflation has been so bad that this might not even be enough to make up for inflation.
It
So-
definitely is not.
Yeah, so it seems fair to me.
Okay,
No, I used to rent a gym from a school in the 90s in New York City, and this would be a steal back then. So,
everything's more expensive in New York City. We're not New York City, but we do have really nice gyms.
yeah.
And not just in the newest school, all 3 of the middle schools
Have been
got
redone.
renovated
Yep.
gyms
Yeah.
in the last couple years. And as we're renovating elementary schools, those are getting renovated gyms as well. And we do a really fantastic job, frankly, of keeping on the maintenance of the high school gyms.
I mean, even with the increased prices, to get the high school gym for, $325 for a nonprofit is pretty good. And then the middle school gym, it only went up to $250 for the for-profit groups, which is really good.
Yeah.
Right, to rent the McCarthy gym for that seemed reasonable to me, especially if
yeah.
you're gonna use it for a day.
I'm just wondering, because how much smaller are the middle school gyms than the high school gyms?
I mean, Fairgrounds is very small.
Yeah,
Whereas Pennachuck and McCarthy are a little bigger, but they're still not as big as the high school gyms.
yeah. I mean, it just seems like a big difference from 250 to 7.
You can fit a lot more people.
It's
in
about
high school
the
gym.
crowd size,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think our high school gyms aren't available as often as the middle school gyms.
Right, so many
Because there's
events.
always an athletic event happening.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if maybe, maybe 250 isn't enough to charge for that. Getting greedy
Ms.
here.
Lampier, I did not expect you to go in that direction.
Yeah, well, but I'm comfortable with moving it forward, and if anyone wants to change it, we can change it at the full board.
Yeah.
What do you think, Mr. Poskett?
I agree with Ms. Lamper. I think we've had some good discussion here. We've done a lot of work to put this in play, to move it forward, to have some more of those discussions, I think is appropriate. But I think we've tried to balance out, the fact that it has been almost 10 years since an increase has been made versus trying to make sure that we still have, our community partners have access to our facilities. So I think that's that fine balance we're trying to juggle.
Just for the record, I was really hesitant to change the prices at all. I just feel like people are getting squeezed all over.
Yeah, we had to change the athletic fees too tonight for.
What
for finance. Yeah, so I can show you those if you want.
I
It's
don't
not
want
too
to
much.
know. I mean, I do want to know because both my kids play athletics. And volleyball is very expensive compared to track. Do we still have I'm getting distracted by this now. Is it still, if you pay for 2 sports, you get the third for free?
Yes, and
Okay.
still, families are still limited to they won't pay any more than $1,500.
Okay. All right, that makes me feel better. And is there still the flexibility for families who have a financial hardship?
Yes, if they qualify for free and reduced lunch, there's no charge. And you can also apply for like a waiver.
Okay. And I know that some of the schools and Ms. Jingers were working on, I'm going to call them played again sports closets, where I know there were some kids who needed lacrosse equipment last year, and the PTOs worked hard to get some lacrosse equipment. So, I mean, unfortunately, it's like a one-time use. You can't then use it again. But I do think that there are some community and school-based things to help people get the equipment they need.
Yeah.
It's a big thing when the kids graduate and they still have, I know my garage is full of equipment. So,
Right.
it's good to know that can go somewhere and get used.
Right, I think it depends on what it is, right? Like a field hockey stick maybe could be reused, but probably not a helmet.
No, a helmet, if the helmet's in good enough condition, it could be reused as long as it meets the standards. The big thing is the standards.
Standard, yeah.
Like lacrosse changed their chest padding standard, I'd say 3 or 4 years ago. So anything that's older than that
Probably isn't
is
safe.
no good. But if it's, something that's been worn only a season, it could definitely be passed down.
I feel like everything in parenting is like that, like car seats, right? Like, can't you reuse the car seat? Everything is expensive when you have kids. Okay, so I'm gonna move that we send policy KF to the full board as presented tonight. No change, we didn't make any changes, right?
We did not.
Okay,
Second.
sorry. All right,
I
all in
always
favor?
Lampier to get in as many seconds as she can, so,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. 3-0. Okay, we're coming up on a full 90 minutes, so I don't have anything in my queue that I want to talk about. But if anybody has stuff, email me and I will add it to the queue. So I move that we adjourn.
second.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning? Aye.
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 All right, it's 7:25.